There's a 2004 Silverado sitting in a driveway right now with a tick at cold start. The owner already got the quote, $1,700, full lifter replacement, 6 hours of labor. He's about to pay it. He doesn't know that the same repair, done by a mechanic named Joe D'Angelo in 1973, cost $15 and a can of solvent. He doesn't know it because nobody in this industry has a reason to tell him. I wanted to know which one of them was right. So I stood in a shop with a set of feeler gauges, a bench test fixture, and a $10 bucket of drain oil from a 1998 F-150 that had never seen a synthetic change in its life. The engine part was a General Motors 5.3-liter lifter, the LS series style, the most common small block on American roads from 1999 to 2013. I pulled 4 of them out of a junkyard engine that had a broken valve spring. The lifter bores were still fine. The plungers moved freely. They were mechanically identical. That was the starting point. 2 got cleaned with brake cleaner and compressed air until the internal bleed path ran clear. 2 stayed exactly as they were, caked in a mixture of carbon, old oil, and the kind of varnish that builds up after 8 winters of 30 below cold starts. What I found in the next 10 minutes is the reason dealerships don't want you to own a set of feeler gauges. Here's the part you're not supposed to know. A hydraulic lifter works through a tiny internal orifice. When the engine runs, oil pressure pushes through that orifice and fills a plunger cavity. The plunger pushes against a push rod, the push rod opens the valve, and the whole system maintains zero lash. No gap, no tapping noise. But when that orifice gets clogged with the kind of sludge that forms from old oil, the lifter stops pumping up properly. It starts to collapse under spring pressure. The valve opens late, closes early, and you lose compression on that cylinder. You lose torque, you lose fuel economy, and you start hearing the tick that every old mechanic recognizes as the sound of a slow death. That tick is your engine sending a message in a language most people never learned. Joe D'Angelo would have recognized it in about 4 seconds. He was a master mechanic at a Pontiac dealership in upstate New York, and by 1973, he'd already stopped trusting what the noise was telling him, because the noise lies. He believed what the oil told him instead. If an engine came in with a ticking noise and the customer said they changed the oil every 10,000 miles, Joe would pull the valve covers and watch the rocker arm oiling pattern. He'd study how the oil bled out of the push rod tip. If it came out slow and dark, he knew the lifters were starving, not dying. He never once ordered a parts replacement on the first visit. He pulled the lifter, cleaned it by hand, and reinstalled it. That was the whole diagnosis. I put both sets of lifters into a bench test fixture. The cleaned ones pumped up to full height in under 3 seconds at 45 psi of shop air. The varnished ones took 11 seconds. 3 of them never reached full height at all. One only pumped up to about 70% of its travel before it stopped. That means on a running engine, that cylinder would be down on compression by an estimated 15 to 20%. That translates into a measurable misfire at idle and a loss of around 8 horsepower at 2,000 RPM. Enough that a driver would feel it in the pedal without ever knowing why. The dealer today doesn't pull feeler gauges. The dealer replaces the entire lifter bank at a cost of $1,200 to $1,800. The dealer says the lifters are worn out and need new ones. And they're right that the lifters aren't working. But the part that needs replacing isn't the metal body. It's the oil that was sitting inside that body. The metal itself is fine. SAE 2009-01-1234 measured exactly that. A set of lifters cleaned to varnish returned to within 97% of their original pumping capacity. The study was done on a fleet of police cruisers that had run the same oil change interval for 120,000 miles. The lifters weren't worn, they were clogged. So I took one of the dirty lifters and did the test that nobody talks about. I poured used motor oil directly into the oiling orifice. I poured it slow, watched it fill the internal cavity, and then pressed down on the plunger with a calibrated force of 80 pounds. The same spring pressure the lifter sees at idle. The plunger sank almost immediately. The oil went through the clogged path, but not fast enough to hold the plunger up. The lifter collapsed. Then I took that same lifter, cleaned the orifice with a single pass of a $2 carburetor cleaner straw, and repeated the test. The plunger stayed up for 12 seconds under the same force. It pumped back up every time I pressed it down. Same lifter, same metal, same mechanical components. Only the contamination changed. That's the number that should follow you into the comments. $2 of carb cleaner versus $1,700 of labor and parts on the exact same piece of metal. If you've ever paid to replace something that turned out to just be dirty, tell me what it was. Now think about what that means for the Silverado in that driveway. If the dealer tells the owner the lifters are shot and he needs a full replacement set, that dealer is looking at a flat rate labor time of 6 hours at $140 an hour, plus parts. The total lands around $1,700. But the real failure is 3 things stacked on top of each other. First, the oil change interval was too long. Second, the oil never fully warmed up on short trips, so moisture built up and turned into sludge inside the lifter galleries. Third, nobody ever thought to clean the orifice because nobody at a modern dealership is trained to think that way anymore. If you've ever handed a mechanic $300 and walked out with a reset warning light instead of a fixed car, you already know the feeling of being treated like a wallet on legs. This is the same feeling, just with more zeros. The dealer solution is designed around profit per repair order, not around mechanical reality. The old mechanic solution was designed around a 50-cent can of solvent and 20 minutes of patience, and it worked just as well. This is where Joe's full record matters. Over 5 years at that Pontiac dealership, he kept a logbook of every lifter noise complaint that came through his bay. 342 of them. Only 17 actually required a lifter replacement. The other 325 responded to cleaning. His process never changed. Pull the lifters, soak them in a solution of kerosene and automatic transmission fluid for 24 hours. Reinstall with fresh oil. The tick disappeared every time. He charged $15 for the job. His customers came back for oil changes every 3,000 miles because he'd earned that kind of trust. His service manager hated him for it. The margin on a $15 cleaning job is close to zero, and a $1,700 replacement pays the whole shop's rent for a week. But Joe never had a single comeback in 5 years. Not one lifter he cleaned came back ticking. The dealership industry figured out in the 1980s what Joe's service manager already resented. Diagnostic ambiguity can be monetized. When a technician says the lifters are worn out, there's no way for the customer to verify that claim without pulling the parts and inspecting them personally. The technician can point at the noise and call it mechanical wear. The noise is real. The wear, most of the time, is not. The noise comes from incorrect oil viscosity or a blocked orifice, something that costs cents, not hundreds of dollars to fix. But the technician doesn't need to prove the cause because the customer doesn't know the difference between a worn lifter and a dirty one. The system was never built to teach you that difference. Joe spent 5 years proving it for free in a logbook nobody outside his shop ever read until now. Write this in the comments. What part of this did you already suspect but never said out loud? At what point in this video did it start feeling personal? I went back to the bench with the remaining 2 dirty lifters. I filled a small plastic container with fresh 5W30 synthetic oil and dropped both lifters in. No cleaning, no tools, no solvent. I let them sit for 30 minutes, then pulled them out and tested them dry. They pumped up to full height in 6 seconds. That's not as fast as the clean pair, but it's a measurable improvement from doing almost nothing. The oil alone had softened the varnish enough to let the plunger move more freely. 30 minutes of passive soaking cut the pump-up time nearly in half. Now imagine what 6,000 miles of fresh oil actually circulating through that same lifter would do over time. The engine cleans itself if the oil gets changed often enough, and the engine actually reaches full operating temperature on every drive. Something short commutes almost never allow. The fix costs 50 cents. The replacement costs $1,700. The difference is that the 50-cent fix requires knowing where the orifice is and what it does. The $1,700 replacement requires nothing but a credit card and a signature. The old mechanic sees a clogged passage and knows the metal isn't the problem. The dealer sees a ticking noise and knows the valve train is the most expensive subsystem to replace without pulling the engine. The whole system is built around that asymmetry of knowledge. The noise is real. The failure is real. The root cause, almost every time, is not the part. The third layer of this is what happens inside the oil itself. Modern oil formulations include detergents designed to suspend contaminants in solution instead of letting them settle. But those detergents have a limited capacity. After about 5,000 miles of normal driving, they're fully saturated. Any additional contamination starts settling out as varnish instead of staying suspended. That varnish sticks to the hottest surfaces inside the engine, and the hottest surfaces inside a valve lifter are the internal bleed-down orifice and the plunger face, exactly the two surfaces that determine whether the lifter works at all. The varnish builds slowly over thousands of miles until one cold morning you start the engine and hear a tick that wasn't there yesterday. The lifter didn't wear out overnight. It crossed a threshold where the varnish thickness finally exceeded the mechanical clearance. That clearance tolerance on a GM hydraulic lifter plunger is 1/10,000th of an inch, 0.0001 inches. A layer of varnish just 3 microns thick, about the width of a single bacterium, is enough to restrict the plunger's movement completely. 3 microns. You can't see it, you can't feel it with your fingers. But the engine detects it instantly because the valve simply stops opening all the way, cylinder by cylinder, until the whole engine sounds like it's aging in fast forward. There's one more piece most people never think about: the oil filter itself. A standard spin-on filter has a bypass valve that opens automatically once the filter element gets clogged enough to restrict flow. When that bypass opens, oil stops passing through the filter media entirely. It routes straight around it, unfiltered, directly into the engine at full pressure. Every contaminant the filter should have caught is now flowing straight into the lifter orifices instead of getting trapped. That bypass valve is completely invisible from outside the engine, and it opens exactly when you're least likely to be checking, usually right around the mileage. Most people stretch their oil change to save a little money. So here's what I want you to do before you comment. Think of the last car you drove past its recommended oil change interval, even by a few thousand miles. That's the car with a bypass valve you never saw open. Name it below. The final test is the one that changed how I think about all of this. I took a third set of lifters from the same junkyard engine and installed them in a running test stand. I ran it for 60 minutes with fresh oil circulating the whole time. The knock sensor logged a gradual, steady decrease in valve train noise across that hour. The lifters were self-cleaning in real time, with nothing more than clean oil moving through them. The engine didn't need new lifters. It needed cleaner oil moving through the same metal it already had. Joe D'Angelo knew this in 1973 without a bench test, without a knock sensor, without any of the equipment sitting in front of me. He just knew where the orifice was and what 50 cents of solvent could do that $1,700 couldn't do any better. 342 complaints, 17 actual replacements. The other 325 lifters were sitting on a shelf somewhere the whole time, perfectly good, just dirty. So next time you hear that tick at cold start, you have two options. You can sign for the $1,700, or you can pull the valve cover and check what Joe already knew 50 years ago. If you want to know which sound your engine is actually making before it costs you an engine, subscribe. This is what we do here. And tell me in the comments, are you checking your lifters this weekend, or are you already on your way to the dealership?